So you want to be a philosopher? Well, your journey starts here, and it starts now. And it starts with a warning about the dangers of the journey you've chosen. Here are some names you may recognize. Socrates, philosopher, skeptic, condemned to death for using arguments to corrupt youth. John Locke, philosopher, skeptic, forced to seek exile abroad, amongst the charges against him, corrupting youth. David Hume, philosopher, skeptic, barred from post at university, amongst the charges, using arguments to corrupt youth. And someone from our own century, Bertrand Russell, philosopher, skeptic, likewise banned from university posts for using arguments to corrupt youth. So it's a pretty dangerous route you've chosen. But there's something else I want you to know about what lies at the end of it. These people are all dead. And you're going to die too. Now, some people want philosophy to solve that problem for them. You've got to be joking. We can't change the way you die, but we can change the way you live. Philosophical skepticism offers a spiritual journey to those who want to live their lives the way things really are. But it won't be an easy journey, because like all human beings, you start off carrying the baggage of your history. And that means there's some pretty weird stuff inside your head. Come and look at some of the weird stuff lying around in my head. ESP, spoon bending, psychic powers, levitation, weird phenomena, Atlantis, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, pyramid power, John Selwyn Gummer, miracles, God, reincarnation, sex with aliens. We philosophers have a technical term for this stuff. We call it crap. Because in a very real sense, these books are all telling you miracle stories. And they work on a strange warp in our rationality. We end up believing them precisely because all the evidence is so strongly against. And common sense tells you there's something wrong with that. For miracles aren't just unlikely or very unlikely, they're intrinsically unlikely. Nothing counts as a miracle unless all that we know about the way the world works cuts against it. So common sense, and the extended common sense we call science, say these things just don't happen. Or do they? For if you're like me, you're left with a nagging doubt, a thought that runs, perhaps there's something in it. And that's where we need the philosophy. But first, a warning. You can't unlearn anything, and beyond this door you'll learn something you might rather not know. Okay, here goes.
Okay, so you've got as far as plain common sense will take you. You don't really believe in miracles, but you've still got that nagging doubt that says perhaps there's something in it. And that's because you haven't taken that little extra step that's the trademark of philosophy. The step to an argument that proves you right on miracles. An argument that says, stick a fork in their ass and turn them over, they're done. Now, when that argument comes at you, I want you to use it in a special way. It won't convert you straight away. You'll have to work on it, think about it, reflect about it, meditate, focus on it, concentrate, but use it. And if you do, it'll build for you a new, cleaner habit of thinking about the world. Here it comes. What the argument says is, it's a piece of advice, never ever give any credence at all to miracle stories. Because if you're to have evidence that a miracle has occurred. You want evidence that something intrinsically unlikely has actually happened. And that means you need two sets of evidence and not just one. You're going to want evidence that things of this sort, whatever it is, are intrinsically unlikely. You're going to need evidence, on the other hand, that a thing of this sort has actually happened. And the point is, you can't have both. One or the other, you can't have both. Because any evidence you're getting in that things of this sort really are intrinsically unlikely just is evidence that they don't happen. So it's evidence against the thought that it's happened. And any evidence you get in that something of this sort has actually happened, that just is evidence that it ain't intrinsically unlikely. The two bits of evidence you need are in conflict. You can't have them both.
This mistake of adding together conflicting bits of evidence isn't confined just to miracles. It applies to fairy stories in general. Take, for example, amazing predictions, astrology, the tarot, Nostradamus the seer. We find the idea of such prediction fascinating, precisely because we're so bad at it. So when we hear, say, that Nostradamus foresaw the Gulf War, it hits us on the gosh button. But it shouldn't. If we could predict the future, it wouldn't be surprising. And since we can't, the safe bet is that Nostradamus didn't. Or take weird psychic powers, like teleportation. When we hear that people can move themselves by sheer psychic power, bing, it likewise hits us on the gosh button. But it shouldn't, because the only reason we find it amazing is that we think people can't do that in the first place. And if we've got good reason to think that they can't, that just is good reason to think they don't. And here's a consequence of our argument. Anyone who believes in fairy stories is forming beliefs irrationally, in the teeth of the evidence. Don't trust them. And beware that part of you which still thinks, perhaps there's something in it. Because that part of you is forming beliefs irrationally, in the teeth of the evidence. Don't trust it. Instead, take out the argument, dust it off, and think it through. And if you keep on doing that, it'll slowly start to work for you. One final thought. We're all suckers for these fairy stories. It looks as though there's something about us as human beings that makes us suckers. We have to ask what that is. Why do we want fairy stories? Well, that's a question for another day.